Hello and welcome back to Typical City. Kvvicha Kvaratskhelia is a transfer target for Manchester City. Those of you that didn't understand what I just said, Kvaratskhelia is a player that I'm sure most of you are well aware of, this superstar that's taking Serie A by storm. Certainly last season he was, at least. This season, a little less so, but you can say the same about Napoli on the whole. I think it's an incredibly exciting prospect, but I've got some questions, I've got some dubious attitude towards the whole thing, the price tag. There are some question marks around Kvaratskhelia and the deal for Manchester City and how well suited he is to Manchester City, as well as links to the potential replacement for a certain individual as well. So I'm not entirely convinced about the whole transfer, but it does excite me still. I think there is huge potential for this player to become a genuine worldie, like an absolute superstar in the game, whether he signs for Manchester City or not. With regards to the likeliness of it happening, the reason why I believe it's likely to happen is because of the rumours coming out and the quotes coming from his agent, which I'll get onto shortly. But before I do, I did want to break well, it's not breaking the terrible news. I'm sure you already were aware of it, that Sven-Göran Eriksson, former Manchester City manager, has been terminally given the bad news that he's got terminal cancer, which is devastating news for him as an individual, as Manchester City fans have got. I've got very fond memories of that time, that short spell he had at Manchester City, signing players like Alano. You know, I think that was like the stepping stone to becoming a bigger club than just mid-table mediocrity. I feel like he played a huge role in that stepping stone for Manchester City and almost put us in the shop window to be advertised to the likes of Sheikh Mansour, with Taskin Shinawatra bringing in Sven-Göran Eriksson. It was still a bit of a shit show at the time, but it was the moment where I felt like we were buying or signing statement names, big players coming into the club. And the news that he's terminally ill, and he himself has said he's been told that he's got a year to live, which is devastating, absolutely devastating. So my heart goes out to Sven-Göran Eriksson. I remember the biggest moment in his Manchester City managerial career was, I think, that Benjani shoulder at Old Trafford, having not beaten Man United in an Old Trafford in a Manchester derby for well over 30 years. He did that. He went to Old Trafford and we beat him. And we beat a fully fleshed out Cristiano Ronaldo, Wayne Rooney, and I'm sure Tevez was playing for them at the time. Sir Alex Ferguson sat in the dugout as well, and Sven-Göran Eriksson took a very bang-average Manchester City side to Old Trafford and beat them, and gave me one of the greatest memories I have as a Manchester City fan. So that's huge news and very sad news. I hope he spends the rest of his years, however long he's got left, enjoying them. But moving back onto Kvaratskhelia, the £87 million price tag is already an alarming amount of money for this player, and that's a minimum. Apparently that's with the Aurelio De Laurentiis is the club president of Napoli. That's the minimum he expects to hear before he'll even entertain the conversation of selling Kvaratskhelia, which isn't great. Manchester City on the whole, we do not have a good relationship with Napoli, certainly not in the transfer side of things with Jorginho and Koulibaly. Historically, deals that we were very much interested in these players and collapsed. Both Jorginho and Koulibaly haven't really lived up to the expectations in the Premier League. Jorginho a little bit more so than Koulibaly has, but still, I don't think they've gone on to be as good a players as they could have been. Who knows what Kvaratskhelia could do. But there is some sort of potential bridge that could be rebuilt between a relationship between Manchester City and Napoli, with Napoli signing a new sporting director. Mauro Meluzzo is the new sporting director as of July 2023. So maybe there's potential for a new relationship between Manchester City and Napoli there. And this is going to be getting off to a flyer if we can get Kvaratskhelia in the door and agree a deal for this player. In the summer, he will have 1 year left on his contract, and he's yet to sign a new contract. But the reason why I've started to take this quite seriously is when the agent starts talking. The guy sounds like he's got a big mouth. Mamuka Jugeli is the agent, former Georgian player who is now the agent of Kvaratskhelia. He was quoted stirring unnecessary pots, to be honest, with Victor Osimhen. Of course, he's a Chelsea target. Chelsea are rumoured to be very highly sought after for him. But he did seem to mention Osimhen in his quotes when talking about his own player. So referring to Victor Osimhen, he said, Victor Osimhen signed a new contract, but do you really think he will spend his entire career at Napoli? I can already tell you he will go to Saudi Arabia next summer. Napoli have raised his salary, but Kvvicha Kvaratskhelia would not accept such a transfer even for 1 billion. He'd rather play for Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, or, last but not least, Manchester City. I added that last but not least bit. That's not a quote, that bit, but still. Kvaratskhelia has different targets and preferences. So first of all, he's pissed off Victor Osimhen by saying these things. Victor Osimhen wasn't happy with Mamuka Jegeli whatsoever, so he took to Instagram and said, "Dear Mamuka Jegeli, you are a piece of filth and a disgrace. I'm embarrassed at your sense of reasoning. Dumb fuck. Keep my name out of your mouth." That's some straight up Will Smith. Keep my name out your damn mouth. Straight up Will Smith shit. That is, as if this is some sort of Oscar ceremony going on here. But anyway, he's pissed off Victor Osimhen. But in the same quote, he did mention Manchester City, which is why I'm talking about it right now, which, I mean, we've been bundled in with Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Barcelona and Manchester City. I mean, Real Madrid are in for Erling Haaland, they're in for Kylian Mbappe, they're in for Kvaratskhelia. They can't afford everyone. They cannot afford anyone. They can barely afford one of them. So Barcelona, same. I mean, what's their pull power now as Barcelona? Do they have the same pulling power? Can they offer the same attractions outside of the marvellous city of Barcelona and the history of Barcelona? Forward thinking, looking at Barcelona going forward, I'm not sure I'd want to play for Barcelona. If I had the ability to sign for City, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid and Barcelona, I'd put Barcelona quite low down on that list. Manchester City, the Pep Guardiola factor, the fact that we've already are proven we're the treble holders, we're the champions of Europe for a fucking reason. You know, we're not nobodies anymore. We are more than somebodies. We are the big dogs in Europe. So this is why we're getting bundled into these conversations, which is great news. And when an agent speaks about a player like this, you tend to take it a little bit more seriously. He has put us fourth on that list. Whether he did that on purpose, I don't know. But he's certainly like poking the bear a little bit, as the bear being the possibility of signing for Manchester City, which does excite me. Other reasons to be excited as well. City did send scouts out in November to watch Georgia lose to Spain 3-1. That was reported purely to watch Kvaratskhelia play some football in the international level. They lost the game. Arsenal have been rumoured to be heavily linked with him as well, and they're quite happy to pay 100 million, the reports are, from an Arsenal perspective. But if City come knocking I mean, obviously we went toe-to-toe, very quickly toe-to-toe with Declan Rice. We went in and we very quickly pulled out. As soon as the figure went above what we were prepared to pay, we were done. Will we do the same for Kvaratskhelia? Will he want to play for Arsenal? Because I didn't hear his agent mention Arsenal. So that's a good start. Arsenal can get in the bin with regards to Kvaratskhelia as far as I'm concerned, if we are interested in him. The issue is what I'm hearing other City fans saying is that he's the Bernardo Silva replacement, which worries me to say those things, because he is nothing like Bernardo Silva. He might play in the same position, but I mean, you're setting yourself up for disappointment if you think Kvaratskhelia is going to come in and be Bernardo Silva. I mean, Bernardo Silva, who can replace Bernardo Silva? Name me a player in the world that can play centre forward, false nine, right wing, left wing, attacking midfield, central midfield, defensive midfield, even left back versus Nottingham Forest and Watford. Name me a player that can do that and still produce the standards that Manchester City require. You think Kvaratskhelia is going to play centre mid, defensive midfield, left back? Not a chance. Absolutely not a chance. So to compare him to Bernardo Silva is stupid and nowhere near the level of comparison that even makes sense. Whether we bring in someone else to do the Bernardo Silva role, and this is more of just another player to add to the squad, that makes a little bit more sense to me, and that excites me. But this is straight up the Georgian Jack Grealish, as far as I'm concerned. The way he plays, not just because of how low he keeps his socks and barely can, he's got the world's tiniest shin pads on. Forget that. It's the fact that he plays a very similar possession style winger. You know, he's not that explosive. Like, he's not. He certainly can dribble. You know, he's Jack Grealish standards of dribbling ability. Control is really the key factor in Kvaratskhelia on the whole. And I mean, his numbers last season were just off the charts. Like, absolutely incredible numbers from Kvaratskhelia. This season a little less so, but I did want to get onto that and reflect onto why that might be happening as well. But let's have a quick look at last season's numbers, which were just ridiculous. 43 appearances, 3,238 minutes, 14 goals and 17 assists. 31 goal involvements. That's insane. And this is the reason, well, not just the reason, but a big factor into why Napoli won Serie A, and they cantered to it. They absolutely demolished Serie A last season, won it with ease in the end. And he also had 1.7 key passes per game and 3 dribbles per game. This season, the numbers don't really speak volumes to, like, compared to last season. He's not quite there yet. He's not quite achieving those numbers, but neither are Napoli. Napoli themselves on the whole are struggling right now. They find themselves 9th in Serie A, and they're 20 points off top spot, which is Inter Milan. 20 points. They're done. They're finished in Serie A. They've barely got a hope of making it into Champions League football. They're going to have a second half of the season turnaround to have any hope of scraping Champions League football. So that's another factor as to why he will have one eye on the rest of Europe, because he's not going to have Champions League football if he stays at Napoli. So he's going to be looking elsewhere. Definitely going to be looking elsewhere. But in terms of his numbers, 25 appearances, 1,928 minutes this season, 5 goals and 5 assists, 1.7 key passes and 3.3 dribbles per game. So his dribbling is improved compared to last season, marginally, and his key passes is identical to last season. And the people will say, well, he's only got 5 goals and 5 assists this season. But don't forget that Napoli have been bobbins. They've been bobbins this season. They've been poor. Really, really poor. That's 10 goal involvements, of which 9 of them are all in Serie A. Napoli have only scored 28 goals in Serie A. So a third of their goal involvements have come from Kvaratskhelia. A third of their goals have come through this man in a season when they're well below par. So that's a great sign for him as an individual. The fact that the team has clearly declined, but he himself hasn't. In a team where it's easy to flourish in a team that's doing really well, that's when it's easier because you're surrounded by quality. You can bump your numbers up a lot easier playing with players that are also playing at the top of their game. When the rest of the team dips and starts to play below standards of football than you used to, yet you still maintain your own personal standards, I guarantee if he played with players that were more on form and the whole squad was playing better, his numbers would be even higher. But to still have a third of the goal involvements all coming through him is fantastic. An absolutely fantastic achievement to say that breathes promise into his future. And the fact he's only 22, he's going to be 23 in February as well. That's exciting. So there's a huge future for him, and someone that definitely excites me. Does he excite you, though, City fans? What do you think about Kvaratskhelia? Where do you see him playing? How do you see him fitting into this Manchester City side? And do you see him as the direct replacement for Bernardo Silva? Positionally, currently, maybe so. But over the course of the season, do you think he can do the Bernardo Silva role and offer that same level of versatility? Personally, I don't think so, but do you? Get in the comment sections below. I want to hear your thoughts. Like and subscribe. Typical City is the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is typical City now, holding up Silva.